I'd like to share a discovery I made a couple months ago while writing an article. You see, I like to keep my thesaurus handy whenever I write anything. And I realized that I had never once, not once, looked up the word disabled to see what I find. Let me read you the entry. Disabled. Adjective. Crippled, mangled, useless, lame, mutilated, handicapped. You know, I was reading this list out loud to a friend and at first was laughing. But I had just got past mangled when my voice cracked. And I had to stop and recollect myself from the emotional shock and impact that these words had unleashed. You know, of course, this is my raggedy old thesaurus, and I'm thinking that this must have been some ancient print date. Right? But in fact, the print date was the early 1980s when I would have just been starting my primary school. And needless to say, thank God I wasn't reading any thesauruses at the time, because based on this entry, the world that I was born into would have been perceived as if someone like me had absolutely nothing positive going on for them. When, in fact, today I'm celebrated for the opportunities and adventures my life has procured. So I immediately went back to look up the 2009 online edition, you know, expecting to find a revision that was worth noting. Unfortunately, it's not much better. And I find the last two near antonyms unsettling. Whole and wholesome. My audiologist has always told me, don't have phone sex, you'll get hearing aids. Jokes aside. In my defense, jokes aside, as hard as it is to hear people, literally and figuratively, make fun of my disability, being half-deaf has actually equipped me for real-life experiences. On October 1st, 2009, at the TED conference, supermodel actress and 1996 Paralympian, Amy Mullins, gave a speech called The Opportunity of Adversity. In her speech, Mullins talks about how 36 years of prosthetics has actually taught her to adapt whenever we encounter little bumps in the road, and that society should follow in her footsteps as well. This speech can be found at TED.com. So I immediately went to look at the 2009 online edition, you know, expecting to find this revision that was worth noting. Yeah. Okay. So it's not just about the words. It's about the values behind these words and how we construct those values. Our language affects our thinking and how we view the world and how we view people. In fact, in many ancient societies, including Greek and Roman societies, believed that to utter a curse verbally was so powerful because to say the thing out loud actually brought it into existence. So what existence do we want to call into power? A person who is limited or a person who is empowered? By doing something as casually as naming a person, a child for that matter, we might be placing lids or casting shadows down on their power. Wouldn't we want to be opening doors to them instead? Now, one person that has opened doors for me is my childhood doctor at the A.I. DuPont Institute in Wilmington, Delaware. His name was Dr. Pusatillo, whose name was apparently too difficult for most Americans to pronounce. So he went by Dr. P, and Dr. P always wore really colorful bow ties. Now, I loved almost everything about my experience at this hospital, with the exception of my physical therapy sessions. I had to do what seemed like innumerable repetitious leg exercises with these thick elastic bands. And I hated these bands. I hated them. I even had names for them. And as a 5-year-old, I was already bargaining with Dr. P to get out of doing these exercises. Successfully, of course. And one day, Dr. P came into one of these sessions of mine. And all of a sudden he said to me, Sally, you are such a strong and powerful little girl. I think you're gonna break one of those bands. And when you do, I'll give you $100. Now, of course, this was a simple ploy on Dr. P's part to get me to do the leg exercises that I did not want to do, for the prospect of becoming the richest 5-year-old on the second floor of work. But what he effectively did for me was actually reshape this awful daily occurrence into a new and promising experience. And I have to wonder today, to what extent in his vision, in declaration of me as a strong and powerful little girl, shape my thinking of myself today as an inherently strong, powerful, and athletic person, well into the future. This is an example of how adults in positions of power can ignite the power of the child. But in those previous instances of those Theosaurus entries, our language isn't effectively allowing our society to evolve into the reality that we would all want. The possibility of an individual to see themselves as capable. You know, it's an interesting thing because people have continually wanted to talk to me about overcoming adversity. The idea that success or happiness can emerge on the other side of a challenging experience, unscathed or unmarked by the experience. As if my success in life has come about with an ability to sidestep or circumnavigate the presumed pitfalls of prosthetics. But in fact, adversity isn't an obstacle we need to avoid in order to resume living our lives. It's part of our lives. And it's all very real and relative to every single person. But the question isn't whether or not we're going to meet adversity, but how we're going to meet it. So our responsibility isn't simply shielding the ones we care about from but preparing them to meet it well. And there's a huge distinction and difference between whether or not we want to protect the ones we care about from that cold, hard medical prognosis, or indeed, a prognosis on our expected quality of life. We have to make sure that we're not placing the first brick in the wall that will actually disable someone. By not treating the wholeness of a person, by not acknowledging their potency, we are actually creating another illness on top of whatever natural struggle they already had. So we have to see through the pathology and into the range of human capability. But I think the greatest adversity we've created for ourselves is this idea of normalcy. I mean, if you asked me at the age of 15 if I would have traded my prosthetics for flesh and bone, I wouldn't have hesitated a second. I aspire to that kind of normalcy better. But if you ask me today, I'm not so sure. And it's because of the opportunities I've had with these things. And perhaps there's been a shift in my thinking over time that I've been more exposed to people who have opened doors for me than those who have placed lids or casted shadows on me. So maybe the idea I want to put out there is not so much overcoming adversity as it is to opening up to it, grappling with it, maybe even dancing with it. And perhaps, if we see adversity as something that's consistent, natural, and useful, we may be less burdened by the presence of it. In fact, the very exact meaning of the word educate comes from the root word educe. It means to bring forth, to bring forward, to bring what is within. So again, what reality do we want to call into existence? A person who is limited or a person who's empowered? So you see, all it takes is one person to show you the epiphany of your own power and your life. If you can hand someone the key to their own power, the human spirit is so receptive. Because if you can open a door for someone at a crucial moment, You are educating them in the best sense. You are teaching them to open doors for themselves. So I truly think that the only disability is actually a crushed spirit. A spirit that's been crushed that no longer has hope. It no longer sees beauty. It no longer has our natural childlike curiosity and our innate ability to imagine. But instead, if we can bolster the human spirit to be creative, imaginative, have hope, to see beauty in themselves and others, then we are truly using our abilities well. When the spirit has those qualities, we're able to create new ways of being. It was so dry.